Welcome to the Antiquities Travel Guide. Follow us to different countries as we search for ancient artifacts. If you too wish to explore the ancient past through travel, we'll help you plan where to go, what to see, and how to best enjoy what you encounter. In this series of the ATG, you can accompany Mariza and me on our trek through England, homeland of the ancient Angles, Saxons, Romans, and Celtic Britons. Come on, let's go! Having booked a flight on British Airways, I arrived at the Tampa airport, ready and raring to go. Mariza and I converged on London separately. She took a flight from LA. The plane landed at Gatwick Airport, south of the city. When I arrived, I caught a train heading into the city of London, the first destination of our journey through England. I'm on the City Thames Link, which is the train from the Gatwick station to the City of London. So if you're flying into Gatwick, the best train to take is the Bedford train, and I'm getting off at City Thames Link, and I'll be right in the middle of town. Londinium. Sounds like an element on the periodic table, but no, we're talking about the ancient name of the city of London. The Romans created the settlement of Londinium in the year 43 of our Common Era during the successful invasion of Britain in the reign of the Emperor Claudius. Not the most respected emperor in his day. He was known more for his feasting than anything else. One Roman historian claims Claudius wanted to pass an edict making it permissible to fart at dinner, but the successful conquest of the southeastern part of Britannia is something he did get praise for. After scoring a major victory at Camalodunum, which is modern Colchester, Claudius accepted the submission of the Britons in a ceremony before he returned home to Rome, where, in time, his victory was commemorated with a triumphal arch. The arch no longer stands, but there's a fragment of it which is now displayed in the courtyard of the Palazzo dei Conservatori in Rome. The reconstructed inscription, and keep in mind it's partly speculative, reads, "The Senate and people of Rome dedicated this to Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, because he received into surrender 11 kings of the Britons, conquered without loss, and he first brought the barbarian peoples across the ocean under the authority of the Roman people." As if his name wasn't long enough, Claudius was given the title Britannicus, also after his victory. We're not exactly sure what the name of the locality was before, but Londinium is probably what it was called in Britannic Celtic. The Roman town started small, and during the revolt of Boudica around 61, which we will get to later, it was completely destroyed. Nevertheless, the Romans rebuilt it, and within a few decades, it became a major commercial center and one of the largest cities in Roman Britain, reaching its peak in the mid-2nd century with a population of between 30 and 60,000 people. It was never a capital back then, but a provincial city with no special legal status, which in Latin was known as a vicus. The name of the city probably morphed into Lundane in the post-Roman period, and then finally into London. Now, despite the fact that London is heavily populated and constantly developing, parts of the old Roman city can still be found if one looks for them. I immediately went to the district called the City of London, the name of which deceivingly only refers to the north-central part of today's London, only one of 33 districts. Locals call it the City for short, and sometimes the Square Mile, which is about how big it is. But it is the oldest section of town. That's where you're going to find things of ancient interest. I stopped off for a bite to eat at a little place called Bepe's, not far from St. Paul's, which I heard was good. And it was good. The proprietors were friendly, and I enjoyed the BST I had for breakfast. I'm here in front of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And, hey, where's my co-host, Mariza? Well, she's not here yet. We were going to fly in together, but her plane got delayed, and so we couldn't meet up. She'll be here in a few hours, and we'll meet up with her. But in the meantime, I've got the whole place to myself. Well, not exactly. not far from St. Paul's is the Museum of London. Visiting it is a great way to get a feel for what Roman London was like. The museum covers the entire history of London, but we ancient history lovers will find particular interest in the part of the museum covering the pre-Roman and Roman periods. These would be the London Before London Gallery and the Roman London Gallery. There are all kinds of great things to see in this museum, and I highly recommend touring it. Admission is free. After that, it was off to search for remnants of the old Roman city outdoors. There's a street today called London Wall, which runs a part of the course of the old Roman wall on the northern side, and portions of the wall can still be found. There's a path called the London Wall Walk, which is about 1.75 miles long. If you have good walking shoes, I think you should take it. Give yourself about 2 hours if you want to take a leisurely pace. The best place to begin an exploration of the remains, I think, is on the western end, near the Museum of London, but you could also start on the eastern end at Tower Hill Garden. Ask about the walk at the museum, and they'll give you a map. Also, keep an eye out for blue and white plaques along the way, which contain valuable information. The first notable site of interest would be the ruins of the Roman fort on the corner of London Wall and Noble Street, very close to the museum. The fort was constructed in the early 2nd century. On the other side of London Wall Street, you can find its gate.
So I went into a Subway to get a drink because I was thirsty. And I said, "Do you have any ice?" And they looked at me like I was crazy. I don't know, is this a thing in England? They don't put ice in your pop?
The Romans built the old London Wall between about 190 and 255 CE, though they continued to expand it over the years. After they withdrew, it stood for many centuries and defined the core of the original city. During medieval times, parts of the wall were strengthened, so there will be a mixture of old and new in some of the parts that you see.
You know what else London doesn't seem to have? It's trash receptacles. I can't throw my cup out. There's no trash cans. Ah, found one.
Probably the most impressive section of the wall is at Cooper's Row near Grange City Hotel. Bear in mind that although the lower part of the wall is Roman, the upper part is medieval. I ended my examination of the old wall at Tower Hill Garden. The wall stands 35 feet high, but the Roman section only goes to 14.5 feet. To add to the mood, there's a statue of the Emperor Trajan, not original, standing alongside it.
Look at that, huh? They don't make them like they used to.
That's not all there is to see of the old city. On Walbrook Street, the remains of a temple of Mithras can be found, which was built in the mid-3rd century CE. There's a museum on top of it called the London Mithraeum, which I had the pleasure of visiting. Most of the artifacts that were found at this site are now in the Museum of London, which I covered earlier, so there isn't much to see at the Mithraeum except the foundations. But the museum is newly refurbished and they make the most of what they've got. Admission is free. Mithraic temples don't appear in the archaeological record anywhere until the 1st century CE, and by the 4th century, they disappear. So it wasn't a long-lived religion. It originated in Anatolia and was Persian influenced. We call it a mystery cult because its rites were secret, and a person became an adherent through special initiation. Its adherents were all males. The temples were situated underground and were commonly called caves, even if the cave was not a natural one. There was no priesthood or clergy that we know of. The mythology of the cult of Mithras hasn't been preserved, so we can only reconstruct it from the art and iconography that we find in the remains of their temples and from scattered references in written works. All we really know about the myth of Mithras is that he was believed to have been born from a rock and is frequently depicted in a tauroctony, that's a slaying of a bull. As he slays the animal, he looks toward the sun. After Mithras kills the bull, the sun kneels before him, and the two of them dine on the bull parts. That's pretty much all we know about the story. One of the things I missed on my London wall walk was a site called the Tomb of the Unknown Roman Girl. I wanted to go back to see if I could find it, It was quite rainy at the time. I got off the train at London Blackfriars and headed eastward along the southern bank of the Thames. I passed the famous site of Shakespeare's Globe as I made my way to London Bridge. Just before the bridge is a really cool spot called the Borough Market, where local vendors sell all kinds of interesting foods. It's right under the tracks, and when you enter, it's like being in another world. I highly recommend it as a place to eat. I got some calamari to snack on, which was very tasty. Then it was over the bridge to find the Roman girl's tomb. I basically just used my GPS, winding my way through the streets to find it, but the GPS wasn't entirely accurate. All I knew about the tomb is that it was found accidentally in 1995, when during construction along St. Mary Axe Street, the remains of a girl who had been buried in the late 4th century were found. They estimated her age to be between 13 and 17. Her bones were taken to the Museum of London, but in 2007, a memorial to her was created on the original site, and the bones were reinterred there. I was eager to find it. Maybe this building is the tomb. I'm not sure how easy it will be to spot. Wait, what's this? Look at this! This magnificent modern building, and at the foot of it, this grave of a young Roman. Can you imagine if she knew that this building now stands here as a testament to her? I went into the building and found out that they call it the Gherkin. Seems appropriate for the shape.
Hey, look, everybody, it's Mariza. She made it.
I made it.
She got here. Finally.
We stayed at the Marriott on Canary Wharf, probably the most comfortable and definitely the most expensive of our lodgings on this trip. It's right on the Thames in an upscale section of town. The staff were very friendly. For supper, we decided to take a ferry across to the southern side of the river, and we went to a place called the Blacksmith's Arms, which the locals seemed to like. The food was good.
What did you get?
Some lobster. I forget. Pasta?
A linguine, I think it
Linguine,
was.
that's right.
The following day was Museum Day. We visited 3 museums. For the first one, we took a side trip out to Reading. We rented a car from Hertz at the London City Airport, which we'll be using actually for the next 9 days.
So, we just picked up our rental from Hertz, and I got to learn how to drive on the left side of the road and on the other side of the car. I don't know if I can do it.
The trip took us about an hour and a half. On the campus of the University of Reading is the Museum of Greek Archaeology, which is run by their classics department. It's quite small. This is a Category 3 museum on our scale, and you can see the whole thing in about a half hour. But they have quite a number of ancient Greek ceramics, which is their specialty. From what I understand, they have thousands, but only a limited selection is on display. Etruscan, Roman, and Egyptian artifacts can be found here too. Not many. Is it worth a special trip to go to Reading to see it? I would say if you're in the area, you should check it out, but I'm not sure it warrants you going too far out of your way. We then drove back to the city and had lunch at a Lebanese restaurant called Heba near the University of London. The food was absolutely delicious. Mariza and I both loved it. Then we walked over to the university, which houses the Petrie Museum, named for famed Egyptologist Sir Flinders Petrie. It's a museum dedicated entirely to ancient Egypt and the Sudan. I placed this in the Category 2 slot. Although the museum is small and the presentation is primitive, the labels on the artifacts appear to have been made years ago on a typewriter, this museum is full of absolutely wonderful Egyptian artifacts. If you like ancient Egypt, you cannot miss this one. Many of the objects were found by Petrie himself. You'll be in here for at least an hour. Not far away was the third and final museum we visited that day, the granddaddy of them all, the creme de la creme, the British Museum, which no lover of ancient history should miss. Its main entrance is here on Great Russell Street.
So if you thought the other two museums we saw were pretty cool, wait until you check out the British Museum. British Museum is unique because its massive collection holds thousands of artifacts from across the world. If you check it out, make sure that you give yourself plenty of time because there are multiple rooms that just have way too much stuff you really can't miss.
This is a Category 1 museum, and it is amazing in almost every way. The Middle East Gallery is huge. It has a large Assyrian section. It's also got a section on ancient Iran, ancient Mesopotamia, the ancient Levant, ancient South Arabia. There's also a gigantic ancient Greece and Rome gallery. A big ancient Egypt gallery. There's also an Americas section with ancient artifacts. And in their Asia gallery, China, India, and so forth, a significant part of those have ancient artifacts too. Be careful not to get too close to the artifacts. You'll need several hours to see everything. And depending on the condition of your feet, it might even be advisable to visit half on one day and half on another. That's how much there is to see.
What do you think?
It was amazing.
I mean, they have everything.
I don't know what other museums have because this apparently has everything in the world.
Right. I mean, every other museum must right now be empty because
They must
whatever
be.
there is here.
At the northern end of Bloomsbury lies another site that is worth checking out. It's about a 15-minute walk from the British Museum. Just head north through Russell Square. Of course, I am talking about the British Library, which has a few goodies you might be interested in. There's an exhibition on the history of writing, which holds several interesting ancient documents, including Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets, a Chinese oracle bone, an Egyptian stela with a hymn to Osiris, a Phoenician stamp seal, a sphinx with a Proto-Sinaitic inscription, a Mayan stela, and something I was particularly interested in checking out, the Codex Sinaiticus. Hailing from the 4th century CE, it's the entire Bible in 2 volumes and contains the oldest surviving complete manuscript of the New Testament. Pretty cool, huh? Our time in London was very enjoyable. The next day we went on our extended road trip through England. Next on the agenda, St. Albans and Cambridge. If you'd like to be notified when that video comes out, please hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it.